Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of F-Side DFS Fantasy NFL Picks. I'm Ross Megaruler 31. Thought I might be talking some baseball today, but amazingly all four series swept. So got a Thursday night football game. Decent game here, Chicago and Washington. Chicago is just really struggling this season, 0-4. Looks like they could have had the win against a Denver team and then lost that late. And then we have Washington at 2-2, who played pretty well the first couple games of the season, and then ran into the Bills buzzsaw, but then played a pretty formidable game against Philly last time out and played them to overtime. So decent total, 44.5, but it's definitely Washington's the favorite here. And for cash, I think definitely how I want to look at as my captain, because Washington is not bad passing. He's been, when the line can protect him. I know he's ended up on his backside quite a few times, but the Bears don't have that great of a pass rush. They are already ranked in the 30s. I think they're 31st in total yards per play, 31st in passing, 23rd in rushing, giving about 30 points a game. Plus, they have a cornerback and a safety that are probably going to be out, in addition to a bad situation getting worse. So Howe, by far, is definitely going to be my favorite captain in cash here. I think you got to run it back with Fields because he is the offense. He looked better last week against the Denver defense. Washington defense is okay. I think just that Buffalo game has really inflated some of these stats. They're ranked against the pass 24th. So we'll just have to, and 18th against the rush. So I think that Fields is still in cash is probably your best option there to run it back. And then Sly, the kicker for Washington, is where I'm going to go. So it gives you 6,900. And I think most people are going to look at it and maybe even skip Sly and go like Howe and Fields. And then McLaren is running in Robinson is running back, and then the Washington D, and then they find out that DraftKings already figured that out, and that leaves you $100, and you can't pick even a punt player to finish off the lineup. So I think, my cash fill-ins are all Washington players there. McLaren, I think, makes a good sense to pair with Howell. He's been the top wide receiver there. I mean, you do have Dotson and Samuel, but I think they're more GPP plays. And then Robinson, I think, is definitely someone to look at for just being able to control the game and maybe running out. Maybe Gibson comes out towards the end to run it down. And I think definitely Washington D makes a lot of sense. And Thomas, if he can stay healthy, the dude just gets banged up so much. He's an incredible tight end when he's out there and playing. So that's where I'm pretty much going with my cash fill-ins. I'm probably going to play it 5-1 in cash. Maybe I'll pair somebody up with Fields. Maybe if I have to take a punt play, I consider one of the really cheap wide receivers with Claypool being a healthy scratch last time, and he's already been ruled out for this game. They're looking to trade or release him. Does that mean that Tyler Scott gets some more looks? Does that mean Quemilius St. Brown? I'll just call him E. St. Brown. It's a lot easier to write, but he only had one target last time. With Claypool out, Scott last time out didn't even have any targets, but he had a couple rushing attempts. He had 3 targets the game before in week 3. And or do they just throw Tanyan, the old Green Bay tight end, and run more 2 tight end sets? So who knows? But I think that's where I'm going for cash. For GPP, I really like the running back defense combination. Washington has had a decent defense, and I think they can get after Fields and definitely get some sacks there. So either make them the captain or make Robinson the running back your captain, and then pair them up with Howe. And then if you want to run it back with a wide receiver like Moore, Moody, I get it. Or just take maybe the Santos, the Bears kicker, if you think it's going to be limited offense, and that's how I'm going to build that. The second GPP is I want to put McLaren up there as the wide receiver. I think, passing, I think he could have a monster game, throw Hall out there in case he spreads out a little bit more. But I think McLaren's going to get the most of the shares and then run it back with Fields. And then, it doesn't leave you that much, but you can throw a couple of kickers in, a defense. There's maybe take one of the punt plays I talked about. Pringle is another wide receiver that's really cheap for Washington. It hasn't had many targets, but sometimes we see in these, especially if they get up and they're resting we've seen like some of the Washington receivers be a little bit banged up. They should be back and healthy, but like, why take the risk if you're up by like 21, 28 points later on? Probably gonna run the ball, but if you need to like throw or something just to try to get a first down to get the clock moving, if you're in like third and long, then Pringle might be like a shot to take or a backup tight end for that. For contrarian core, put Moore or Mooney. I mean, Field can definitely be your captain, and I don't think that's contrarian. And that could even be a cash play. I'm fine with that. Flipping Field and Hall in the cash one, that's fine. But I can't call that contrarian build. A contrarian build would be a wide receiver from Chicago out there with Fields and then running it back with McLaurin. The running back situation from Chicago, here's how you play them. They're GPP only. I don't think you can play them in cash. Herbert looked better last game out. And I think it could be potentially the situation that it frustrates us with Detroit. Detroit really hasn't been down a ton this year. So it's really been, one running back over the other one. And Gibbs is the one like I drafted, like he's explosive. We thought that he'd be out there, and like Swift had the same role when he was there. But he's like the pass catching back, the electric one out of the outfield, where Montgomery is like the hammer and your every down back. And you're not going to see Gibbs have a great game unless they're trailing and need to catch up. And you're going to see Montgomery have good games if they're like controlling the ball, controlling the tempo with a great offensive line, and things like that. I think potentially, even though the Bears don't have a great offensive line, I think it's kind of the same thing where we saw Herbert do well because they were leading against Denver until they blew it at the end. But we see Johnson come in because he's more of the scat back, catch the ball out of the backfield, things like that. And so how's this game going to go? So I think Washington's going to dominate. So Johnson would probably be the better one in GPP. But if you think for some reason, and maybe even this contrarian build here with Moore and Fields, if they're going to get up and be able to hold it, maybe throw Herbert in the Bears defense in that contrarian GPP, run it back with McLaurin, and you should still have, especially having like Moore or Moody as captain, you should still have enough money probably to get like a kicker or something like cheap. And the Bears defense is relatively cheap also. It should be able to have a decent contrarian line that way. And then for cheap captain, I like Thomas, the tight end there, running back with Howell, obviously, well, not running back with Howell, and then Dotson or Samuel. I want to get exposure to like them, so, or maybe even play both. Maybe do like a mini stack here, fade McLaren, then whatever Bears piece you want to run it back with there, and then figure out if you're going to pair like Fields and a wide receiver in this build, because you're going to have a lot of money left if you do it this way. Or if you just take Fields alone and throw in another Washington piece or the defense or however you want to do it, in like those contrarian ones, don't try to like zero out your lineup, because optimizers are going to do that. If you want to leave like 2, 3, 500 in some of these GPPs, especially like the cheap captain contrarian ones, the cheap captain helps you get like all the major like price pieces that you might want in it. So it makes sense to get like Fields in this one. But in some of these GPPs, if you want to be different, then a way to be different also is to leave a couple like $100 on the table and don't try to pay up. And in some of these builds too, where I built what I wanted, I ended up in like the $1,800 range. It wasn't enough to get up to Gibson. I'm kind of in like no man's land. So I think at that point I was just dropping down to like T. Scott or Pringle instead of going to like the St. Brown range, just because he only had one target. And I think if everybody lands that range, they're going to go there. But if I drop down and leave some money on the table, it's going to make my lineup different enough that hopefully it'll help me win in some of these GPPs. So that's what I got for you. If you ever want more information on FSI DFS, then you can get into our Discord by going into the link or into the description of the video, and it'll take you right there. And just we've got a couple more days left of free NHL before the season starts. But Kinley's excited about that. He's retooling some of his sheets and some of his data stuff, and it looks like it's going to be pretty cool. And we have MLB postseason has been free too, so you can sign up for that. So thanks for that. And thanks for watching the video if you made it this far. So if you want to help us, you can like the video, subscribe to our channel, or share with your friends. So appreciate you watching. Should be back for the week 5 recap on Saturday night, Sunday morning, sometime around there. So good luck in your contests. If you have any questions, put them in the chat below, and hope you have a great, amazing start to your weekend. See you next time.